It's no secret that money plays a role in American politics, and while some might be disturbed by its influence, nothing in recent memory approaches how money, and cash to be exact, was used by Joe Kennedy Sr. during the 1960 presidential election. For more than 30 years, the patriarch of the Kennedy family used his immense wealth and influence as a tool to advance first his political ambitions and later those of his son John. Few realize, though, just how vast and unethical the electioneering by the elder Kennedy really was. It seems, quite literally, he bought the U.S. presidency for JFK. It's the topic of tonight's Real History.
Joseph Patrick Kennedy Sr. was the son of a Boston saloon keeper and ward healer who had the great good fortune to go to Harvard. He made money in Massachusetts banking, in bootlegging, in legal liquor sales after Prohibition, in film, in Wall Street, where he was very smart and got out before the crash and cleared a cool $1 million. After that, it was real estate, and he was one of the richest men in America. Joe Kennedy changes the course of American history twice, once in 1932 and again in 1960. In 1932, Franklin Roosevelt's governor of New York. He's running for president of the United States. He needs cash. Joe Kennedy has lots of cash and can provide some of that to the campaign. Franklin Roosevelt was in danger of falling short of the nomination, of losing it. Joe Kennedy makes a call to William Randolph Hearst, who controls the California delegation. He says, get on board for Franklin Roosevelt or you're going to end up with someone much worse. The votes are swung to FDR, and FDR gets the White House ultimately. In return for Joe Kennedy's favors in the 1932 campaign, Franklin Roosevelt makes him head of the Securities and Exchange Commission and appoints him ambassador to Great Britain. This sets Joe Kennedy's already huge ego aflame, and he decides he should be president of the United States. Joe Kennedy wears out his welcome not only with Franklin Roosevelt, but with the American people, as he's an isolationist, and he loses that argument because America enters the war. He can't be president himself, but his son, Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., can be. Joe Kennedy determines to serve in World War II, to be a hero like his brother Jack. He flies a bomber over the English Channel with the biggest load of dynamite known to man. And it explodes. Nothing is left of Joe Kennedy Jr. And Joe Kennedy Sr.'s ambitions have to be transferred once again, this time to son Jack. In 1960, Jack Kennedy faces Hubert Humphrey for the nomination. They fight first in Wisconsin. Hubert Humphrey has an advantage. He lives next door in Minnesota, and he comes a little too close for comfort to Jack Kennedy in that primary. He was about ready to quit, but then he says, maybe I can pull it off in West Virginia. The state is 97% Protestant. Jack Kennedy had done very well in polling at the beginning of the year. That was before the folks in West Virginia had learned that Jack Kennedy was a Catholic. Kennedy went down precipitously in the polls. It looked like it might be curtains for his presidential campaign. So what has to be done is you have to have a full court press in West Virginia. And that press involves a big chunk of Joe Kennedy's money. The Kennedys are very tight with one of the pillars of the Catholic Church at that time, Richard Cardinal Cushing of Boston. Back then, a lot more people went to church, and they put their donations into the basket, and then they would take them out and take them to the bank. And what Joe Kennedy would do would be to take all that cash and keep it for himself, and then write out a check, a slightly larger check, to the Archdiocese of Boston. Let's just say $950,000 went into the baskets that Sunday, on a given Sunday. Joe Kennedy writes a check for $1 million. Cardinal Cushing is $50,000 richer. Joe Kennedy has $950,000 in untraceable cash and also one very big tax deduction. What Joe Kennedy and Cardinal Cushing have engaged in is an amazingly large case of money laundering. The money is going to go into what they call sort of walking around money in West Virginia. In some cases, you got $1. Maybe you got a drink to go vote for Kennedy on primary day in West Virginia. Jack Kennedy outspends Hubert Humphrey officially 4-1. One of the great things about Jack was his wit, was his ability to laugh off charges. He would say, I just got a telegram from my father. And he said, Jack, I'm willing to pay for a victory, but I'm not willing to pay for a landslide. Joe Kennedy may not have wanted to pay for a landslide, but he was perfectly willing to pay whatever it took to get his son into the White House.